And we have a daughter that lives in New York. And this actually happened a few years ago. She had migraines a lot. And so she had a friend come over when she had a migraine. The friend took a look at her and saw how bad she was, sent her to the hospital in an ambulance. And they did a scan on her brain. And after 3 different very invasive kind of tests and scans of her brain, doctor concluded definitively that she had 2 aneurysms on her brain in inoperable places in her brain. And one of the aneurysms looked like it was getting ready to rupture. Now, like I said, it's really easy to get up here and preach a nice, inspiring message. Living this, guys. We're fighting for our kids. We're fighting for our grandkids. We're fighting for the next generation. We're fighting for them to be what God's called them to be. And if your kids out there in the world and left their faith behind, I'm telling you, it is time for divine reversals. Amen? We have a covenant with our God, and he wants to keep covenant with us. This Hamon spirit wants to take our kids out, wants to wipe out a generation. So I flew to be with my daughter because the doctor said, listen, I need to go in and find out if there's any pathway forward that I can get in there to intervene in this situation with these aneurysms, because one of the aneurysms looks like it's going to rupture, and if it ruptures, it's going to kill her. It's at a part of her brain that she will not survive. So at that point, our 34-year-old daughter flew home, sat down with us, and had the conversation about a living will, that she didn't want to be left on life support, that she didn't want. I mean, this is not a fun conversation to have. When the doctor's telling her that death is imminent and she's living with a death decree, hear me, over her life, it gets real. I was preaching Esther chapter 9 when this happened. And I said, oh no, devil. You're not having my daughter. So the doctor was going to go in with a camera and look to see if he could intervene. So I flew up, went with her to one of the major hospitals in New York. The doctor came in, a good Jewish man, sat down with us and showed us the x-rays of my daughter's brain, showed us where the aneurysms were, and he said, Mom, I promise I'll do my best. He said, but I have to tell you that in full disclosure, that even this procedure could kill her. And I said, Doctor, that's not going to happen. I have a covenant with my God, and I'd like to pray for you as you go in to do this procedure. And so I prayed for him, I prayed for her, and then I went out into the waiting room, and I continued to pray. 2 hours passed, and the doctor came out, and he said, Mom, come back here. And I followed him back into the procedure room, and I walked into that procedure room. I saw that my daughter was alive and well over on the table being tended to. And the doctor said, come over here. And he brought me to a wall that had about 20 pictures of the inside of my daughter's brain, more information than I needed to know, okay? And he pointed to these pictures, and he stood there in front of the pictures with his hand on his hip, and then he went, Mom, I can't find any aneurysms on her brain. We serve a faithful God, I'm telling you. We serve a God that brings divine reversals, I'm telling you. If he did it for me, he'll do it for you. If he did it for my child, he'll do it for your child. So we had to wait about 8 hours before I took her home. And I just want to show you the goodness of God. We took her home. I tucked her into bed in her little bitty, tiny, extremely expensive, hurts my head apartment in Brooklyn. Jesus, help us, okay? It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I tucked her in, and I walked down to the corner store to pick up a few groceries, and while I'm standing in line, waiting my turn, I'm standing behind a very tall Jewish man who's all decked out in his ceremonial clothing. He's an Orthodox Jewish man with the hat and the little curls on each side of his head. I know y'all know who I'm talking about. And he's standing in line with a single item in his hand. A study of the book of Esther. You just can't make this stuff up, okay? And I said to him, because this was the day that my daughter's death decree was overturned for life. And I said to this man, I said, you know, I'm a Christian, and I love the book of Esther. And he turns and he looks at me, And he says, well, if you loved Esther, then you would know what today is. And I did not. He said, today we celebrate Purim, the holiday of reversals. That was 7 years ago, and I preached the fire out of it 7 years ago. The Lord told me we're coming in to a massive season where the decrees of death and destruction are being overturned, not just over our generations, not just over our finances, but over the church and over this nation. Amen? Long-standing decrees that it seems like there's no way it could ever be overturned. I'm telling you, we saw it with Roe v. Wade. We're going to see one thing after another, after another, after another. I want you to stand to your feet. Stand to your feet with me. Now listen. Esther, they slaughtered their enemies that came after them, including Hamon's 10 sons. They were already dead. Hamon was dead in chapter 7. They're now dead in chapter 9. Esther goes before the king again. Sweet Esther. Sweet, queen, beautiful Esther. And the king says, now what do you want, Esther? Ask whatever you want. And she said, take the bodies of Hamon and his sons and hang them up. They're already dead, but hang them up. That seems a little bloodthirsty. But you know why? Because in that culture, when you hung your enemy's body, what you were decreeing is their reign of wickedness is over. The reign of wickedness is over. The reign of the robber, the reign of the thief. Now, I know we'll deal with the devil till Jesus returns, but I'm telling you that which has been sent against us for evil is getting ready to be turned for good. The curse is getting ready to be turned to a blessing. I'm telling you, this is the season we're living in right now. Amen? And I want to read you out of Colossians because Jesus did the same thing. It says, then Jesus, Colossians chapter 2 says, then Jesus made a public spectacle of all the powers and principalities of darkness, stripping away from them every weapon and all their spiritual authority and their power to accuse us. And by the power of the cross, Jesus led them around as prisoners in a procession of triumph. He was not their prisoner. They were his. Jesus was saying, enough is enough. I've won the battle. I've won the victory. Now you just have to go out and appropriate it. Amen? And so as we're standing here, I'm going to lead you in a decree.